The rain had only just started when Jake pulled his old sedan into the pickup lane outside the hospital. The wipers squeaked tiredly across the glass, his eyes heavy from another long night. One more ride, he told himself. Just one more, then home to Lily. A woman in a neat blue coat appeared under the streetlight, her bag clutched close to her side. She opened the back door quickly and slid in. "Westbury Apartments," she said, her voice calm but carrying an edge of fatigue. Jake nodded, shifted into gear, and steered onto the wet road. He'd been driving long enough to notice the little things, how she kept glancing at her phone without typing, how her foot tapped against the floor mat in an anxious rhythm. She looked like someone used to carrying weight in silence. He knew that feeling too well. Traffic was light, just a few scattered headlights cutting through the rain. Then it happened in a flash. The truck ahead swerved, tyres screeching on slick pavement. A sedan slammed into the guardrail. Another car spun sideways, headlights slicing across the dark like wild beams. Jake reacted instantly. He gripped the wheel, cutting hard to avoid the spinning vehicle. His tyres skidded, but he kept control, steering them clear of the chaos. The woman in the back seat gasped, bracing against the door as the sedan ahead came to a stop with a sickening crunch. Through the downpour, Jake caught sight of something that froze him. The faint outline of a car seat in the wrecked sedan and the sharp, panicked cry of a child. He pulled over without hesitation, threw the gear into park, and bolted into the rain. The woman in the back seat leaned forward, shocked but didn't move. She just watched as he yanked open the twisted rear door of the wreck. Inside, a little boy sat strapped in, sobbing, his small fists clenching the seatbelt. "It's okay, buddy. I got you," Jake said, his voice steady, hands moving fast. The buckle finally clicked free, and he lifted the child out, holding him close against the storm. Behind them, the woman from his car stood in the rain now, her coat pulled tight, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. She wasn't the one saving the boy, but she would remember the look on the driver's face, calm, fierce, completely focused. By the time the police and paramedics arrived, Jake had already handed the child to the medics and stepped back, soaked through. He didn't linger for thanks or recognition. He just walked back to his car, water dripping from his hair, and slid behind the wheel like nothing had happened. The woman studied him, still shaken. "That was incredible," she whispered. Jake started the engine, eyes fixed on the road. Just did what needed to be done. But she knew better. Most people would have frozen. He hadn't. He moved like someone who'd carried responsibility before, someone who knew what it cost to hesitate. As the city lights reflected in the rain-soaked streets, Emily, though she hadn't given her name yet, sat in silence, her mind circling the same thought. She had stepped into a stranger's car tonight. But maybe he wasn't a stranger at all. Maybe he was someone worth knowing. Morning light seeped through the blinds of Jake's small apartment, painting the walls in pale grey. He stood at the stove flipping pancakes, his sleeves rolled up, hair still damp from a quick shower. Lily sat at the table swinging her legs, her backpack already packed beside her chair. "Extra chocolate chips?" Jake asked, sliding one onto her plate. Lily grinned, though she was pale from a restless night. "Mum used to say too many chocolate chips would make me bounce off the walls." Jake smiled faintly at the memory, setting down a glass of milk. "Then it's a good thing these walls are tough." They shared a laugh, but it didn't last long. Lily coughed, then pushed her plate away. Jake's brow creased. She never turned down pancakes. By evening, her fever climbed. Jake bundled her into a jacket, worry etched deep in his face, and drove to the urgent care clinic near their apartment. The waiting room buzzed with tired families and coughing children. He carried Lily inside, her head resting against his shoulder. At the reception desk, a nurse pointed them toward an exam room. Jake laid Lily gently on the bed, brushing damp hair from her forehead. His hands felt useless, heavy. He had faced car crashes, late bills, and long nights, but nothing rattled him like his little girl's fever. The door opened, and there she was. The woman from the back seat 2 nights ago. The one who had watched him pull a child from a burning wreck of twisted metal. Her copper hair was tied back now, her white coat marking her role. She froze for a heartbeat, surprise flashing in her eyes. "You," Jake muttered, just as startled. Emily steadied herself quickly. "I'm on call tonight," she explained, her voice calm but softening when her gaze shifted to Lily. "Let's see what's going on." She knelt beside the bed, her movements confident yet gentle. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, placing the thermometer under Lily's arm. "Not feeling too good?" "My head hurts," Lily whispered, her voice raspy. Jake hovered at the bedside, his arms crossed tight across his chest, as if bracing himself. Emily glanced up, catching the fear in his eyes. "She'll be okay," Emily reassured, reading the results. "Looks like a simple infection. Some rest, some medicine, and she'll be back to herself in a few days." Jake let out a breath he hadn't realised he was holding. His shoulders slumped, the tension slowly unwinding. Emily handed him a prescription slip, then hesitated. Her professional tone softened into something more personal. "I know we don't really know each other, but if she gets worse, call me." She pulled a card from her pocket, slipping it into his hand. "Day or night, I mean it." Jake looked at the card, suspicion flickering in his eyes. He wasn't used to kindness without a price. But when Lily reached for Emily's hand with a small, tired smile, he stayed quiet. Later that night, back at home, Lily clutched the card like a treasure. "She's nice," she murmured, curling under her blanket. "Can we see her again?" Jake smoothed her hair, kissed her forehead and whispered, "We'll see." But long after Lily drifted to sleep, Jake sat in the dim kitchen turning the card over in his fingers, unsettled by how one stranger's presence had already woven its way into their small, fragile world. The weekend arrived with grey skies and a drizzle that made the streets glisten. Jake sat at the small kitchen table, surrounded by scraps of cardboard, wires and a box of foam planets. Lily was supposed to build a model of the solar system for school, but the project wasn't going well. "Dad, Saturn keeps falling," she complained, her forehead pressed to her hands. The foam ball with the crooked rings rolled across the table again, wobbling before it dropped to the floor. Jake picked it up, sighing. Mechanics, engines, tools, those he could handle. But balancing planets with wire hangers? That was another story. "Maybe Saturn's just feeling stubborn today," he said, trying to coax a smile. Lily managed a small laugh, but frustration lingered in her eyes. That evening, while picking up Lily's prescription at the clinic, Jake ran into Emily again. She noticed the tired slump of his shoulders, the way his daughter leaned against him with quiet trust. "How's she doing?" Emily asked. "Better," Jake admitted, "but now she's got this school project, and neither of us are exactly engineers." Emily smiled, genuine and warm. "Science projects? I loved those when I was her age." She hesitated, then added carefully, "I could stop by tomorrow if you're comfortable with that, just to help Lily get it done." Jake's first instinct was to say no. He didn't like letting people into their world. But then he looked at Lily, who perked up immediately. "Really? You'd help me with my planets?" she asked, her voice hopeful. Jake rubbed the back of his neck, reluctant. "It's just, we don't usually have visitors." Emily met his gaze steadily. "I wouldn't come unless you said it was okay." After a long pause, Jake sighed. "All right, tomorrow." He scribbled their address onto the corner of a receipt and handed it to her. The next afternoon, Emily knocked gently on the apartment door. She wasn't dressed like the polished doctor Jake had first met, just jeans, a sweater, and her hair loose around her shoulders. She carried a small bag of supplies and smiled when Jake opened the door. "Hi," she said softly. "I brought reinforcements." Lily darted past her father and pulled her inside. "Come see, it keeps falling apart." Emily knelt at the table, studying the wobbly structure. "I think I know a trick," she said, pulling out a roll of sturdy wire and tape. Her patience was steady, her explanations simple. "Think of it like a balance beam. If Saturn is heavy on one side, what do we need on the other?" "Jupiter!" Lily exclaimed, her eyes lighting up as she shifted the planets. Jake leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching. For the first time in a long time, his daughter was laughing with someone else, someone who didn't feel like a stranger anymore. By the time the project stood solid and straight, every planet in its place, Lily clapped her hands in triumph. "It worked!" Emily chuckled. "It's not perfect, but that's the best kind of science." As evening settled in, she gathered her things to leave. Lily threw her arms around her waist in an unguarded hug. "Thank you," she whispered. Emily's eyes softened. She looked up at Jake, and for a moment the air between them shifted, something unspoken passing in the silence. Gratitude, curiosity, maybe even the first fragile thread of trust. After she left, Jake stood at the window watching her car pull away. Behind him, Lily carried the solar system to her room, humming proudly, and Jake, staring out into the drizzle, admitted something to himself he hadn't dared in years. Letting someone in didn't feel as dangerous as he thought. It felt right. The following Saturday, Emily stopped by the apartment to check how Lily's project had turned out. The solar system hung proudly from a string in her bedroom, balanced and steady. Lily showed it off with a grin that made Emily laugh out loud. "You did an amazing job," Emily said, crouching down to meet her eyes. "You'll have the best project at the fair." "Because you helped," Lily replied matter-of-factly. "You should come see it at school." Emily's smile faltered for a second, caught by the warmth in the little girl's voice. She glanced at Jake, who was leaning in the doorway, arms folded. His eyes softened, but he said nothing. As Emily turned to go, she hesitated. "Listen, you both have been through a lot lately. After the fire drill at school this week and everything with her fever, I thought maybe you could use a night where you don't have to cook." She cleared her throat, almost shy. "I make a decent spaghetti. Why don't you come over for dinner? My treat. No strings." Jake frowned, ready to decline, but Lily jumped in. "Spaghetti? Dad, please, we never go anywhere." He sighed, meeting Emily's patient gaze. "All right, just dinner." That evening they pulled up outside Emily's building. Jake parked his old sedan in the underground garage, glancing around at the polished walls and bright lighting. Lily clutched his hand, her eyes wide. Emily was waiting by the door upstairs. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair down for once, and there was something almost nervous in the way she smiled. "Come in." Lily stepped inside and gasped. The living room stretched out like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows, sleek furniture, city lights twinkling far below. "It looks like a castle," she whispered. Emily laughed gently. "Not quite, just a place that's too big for one person." They ate spaghetti at her spotless dining table, and Lily chatted happily, telling Emily about school, books, and how her dad made the best pancakes in the world. Jake relaxed bit by bit, though he couldn't help noticing how every surface gleamed, how empty the shelves were of anything personal. No photographs, no messy signs of life. After dinner, Emily led them onto the balcony. The city stretched endlessly, glittering against the night. Lily pressed her face to the glass railing. "It's like looking at stars, but closer." Emily's smile softened. "When I was your age, I used to imagine each light was a different family. It made me feel less alone." Jake turned to her, surprised by the honesty in her voice. For a moment, he saw past the polished doctor to a woman who had spent too many nights staring at the city by herself. When it was time to leave, Lily hugged Emily tightly. "Can we come back?" she asked, her voice hopeful. Emily hesitated, emotion flickering across her face, then nodded. "Of course." On the ride home, Lily leaned against Jake, her voice sleepy. "She looks lonely, Dad." Jake didn't answer. He kept his eyes on the road, the city lights fading in the rearview mirror. But in his chest something stirred, an awareness that maybe, just maybe, the distance between their worlds wasn't as impossible as he once thought. The following week, Emily invited Jake and Lily to a community health day at the clinic. There were checkups, flu shots, and even a science corner for kids. Lily tugged on her dad's sleeve until he gave in, though Jake felt out of place the second he walked through the doors. Families filled the waiting area, nurses moved briskly from table to table, and Emily seemed to be everywhere at once, kneeling to calm a crying toddler, greeting an elderly patient by name, explaining instructions with patient clarity. Jake watched from a corner chair, noticing how different she looked here, confident, in control, belonging. "Dad, look!" Lily waved from the science table, where Emily was showing her how to make a balloon rocket. Jake managed a small smile as Lily's laughter rang out, filling the room. Later, Emily pulled Jake aside to her office to give him some paperwork. The room smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, lined with books and framed certificates. Jake's eyes wandered as she searched through a drawer, until they landed on a corkboard above her desk. A photograph, his breath caught. It was Rebecca, Not a posed portrait, but a candid shot, smiling faintly from a hospital bed. Jake froze, his chest tightening. "Where did you get that?" His voice was sharper than he intended. Emily followed his gaze and stilled. "That's Rebecca, isn't it?" She spoke softly, carefully. Jake's jaw clenched. "You knew her?" Emily set the file down, her hands folding together. "Not well. She wasn't my patient directly, but I was covering a few overnight shifts back then. I remember her. She was unforgettable." Jake's throat tightened. Memories rushed back. The endless hospital nights, Rebecca's fading strength, the way she'd smiled through the pain just to keep him from breaking. "She never mentioned you," he muttered. "She wouldn't have," Emily said gently. "I wasn't her main doctor, just someone who checked in when others were off duty. But even in those short moments, I could see how much she loved you and Lily. She talked about you both every time." Jake turned away, staring at the wall as if it might hold him together. "Why are you telling me this?" Emily's voice softened. "Because I think you deserve to know. She fought for every day she had, and she never once doubted that you would keep going. She trusted you completely." For a long moment, Jake said nothing. He pressed his palm over his face, hiding the sting in his eyes. He had carried the weight of Rebecca's loss for years, convinced he was failing at the promise he'd made her. Hearing her name spoken again, by someone who had been there even briefly, stirred something deep inside him. Pain, yes, but also a strange kind of comfort. From the hallway, Lily's laughter drifted in again, bright and unburdened. Jake lowered his hand and steadied himself. "Don't tell her," he said quietly. "She's too young. She doesn't need that weight." Emily nodded. "I won't." When they stepped back into the busy corridor, Lily ran up and slipped her hand into Emily's without hesitation. Jake watched, his chest heavy. He had spent years locking away his past, building walls around their small life. But now, standing between his daughter and the woman who unknowingly carried a piece of Rebecca's final days, he realised those walls were starting to crack. After the clinic visit, Jake carried Rebecca's memory heavier than ever. He didn't know whether to thank Emily for speaking about her or resent her for reopening old wounds. Every time Emily stopped by, every time she laughed with Lily, Jake felt torn in two, grateful yet uneasy. She was stitching herself into their world, and that scared him more than he wanted to admit. One Tuesday afternoon, Jake came home from a long shift and found Lily at the table, her head bent over a brand new hardcover book filled with bright pictures of galaxies and constellations. She looked up, her face glowing. "Dad, look what Dr. Emily gave me. It has all the planets, and even black holes. She said I should keep asking questions, because that's what smart people do." Jake froze in the doorway, his chest tightening. He had promised himself he would provide for his daughter no matter how hard it was. Seeing her with a book he couldn't afford stirred something raw inside him, pride mixed with shame. That evening, Emily stopped by with soup for Lily. She smiled when she saw the book open on the table. "I thought it might help with her project. She's got such a curious mind." Jake's voice came out sharper than he meant. "You can't keep doing this." He picked up the book, holding it between them. "I didn't ask you to buy her things." Emily blinked, startled. "It wasn't charity, Jake. It was a gift for Lily." He shook his head, anger rising not at her but at himself. "You think I can't give her what she needs? That she has to look to you for everything?" Her brows drew together, her voice calm but firm. "That's not what I think. I see a little girl who loves learning and a father who's breaking his back to give her everything. A book doesn't change that, it just adds to it." Jake's jaw tightened, words spilling before he could stop them. "You don't understand. Every time I let someone close, it ends with me cleaning up the mess. I can't let Lily depend on anyone who might walk away." Emily's eyes softened, though her voice wavered. "Jake, not everyone leaves. And letting someone help you doesn't make you weaker, it makes you human." For a long beat, the only sound was Lily flipping a page, humming quietly to herself. Jake looked at her, then back at Emily. The fear in his chest turned his gratitude into something jagged, something that lashed out instead of reaching for help. Finally, he set the book down with a thud. "I need you to stop, for her sake." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. Emily's lips parted as if to respond, but she closed them again. She grabbed her coat, her voice quiet but steady. "I wasn't trying to replace anyone, Jake. I just thought maybe I could make things easier." She left before he could answer. Jake turned to find Lily watching him from the doorway of her room, the book still clutched against her chest. "Dad," she whispered. "She was just trying to be nice." Jake knelt, pulling her close. "I know, sweetheart," he murmured, pressing his face into her hair. "I just don't want you thinking we're not enough." But when he tucked her into bed later, the apartment felt emptier than it had in years. And Jake, staring at the dark ceiling, couldn't escape the truth. Pushing Emily away hadn't brought him peace. It had only left him lonelier. The silence after their fight lingered. Emily stopped calling, and Jake told himself it was for the best. But each night, as he drove long hours through the city streets, he caught himself glancing at Lily in the rearview mirror of memory, her small hands turning the pages of that science book, her smile lighting up when Emily was around. He told himself it was safer this way, even as the emptiness pressed heavier against him. It was nearly midnight when the sharp smell of smoke jolted him awake. He blinked, disoriented, then realised it wasn't a dream. The hallway outside their apartment was already hazy, alarms screaming down the corridor. "Dad?" Lily's frightened voice carried from her room. Jake's heart surged into his throat. He grabbed her, wrapping her in a blanket, but when he tried the front door, heat and smoke pushed back hard. The stairwell was impassable. His mind snapped into survival mode. The fire escape, old, rusted, barely safe, but their only chance. He shoved the window open, coughing as smoke filled his lungs. The metal groaned under his weight as he stepped out with Lily clinging tightly to his neck. "Don't look down, sweetheart," he whispered, steady despite the fear in his chest. "Just hold on, I've got you." Step by step, the escape rattled beneath them. Flames licked out of a nearby window, casting orange light across the night. By the time they reached the ground, neighbours were gathering, some shouting, some crying. Fire trucks wailed in the distance, racing closer. And then, "Jake!" He turned, startled, to see Emily pushing through the crowd. Her hair was loose, her jacket thrown over her scrubs. She must have just finished her shift at the hospital, driving home when she saw the smoke billowing from the complex. Without hesitation, she ran straight to him. "Give her to me," she said, already checking Lily's face, her pulse, her breathing. "She's inhaled smoke, we need oxygen now." Paramedics rushed over with a mask, and Emily held it gently over Lily's mouth and nose, murmuring reassurances while Jake stood frozen, his hands trembling. Watching Emily's calm steadiness as she soothed his daughter, something in him cracked. Hours later, when the fire was under control and Lily lay resting in a hospital bed, Jake sat slumped in the chair beside her. His clothes reeked of smoke, his body exhausted, but his mind couldn't stop replaying the sight of Emily sprinting toward them through the chaos, as if she belonged at their side. "She's going to be okay," Emily said softly, breaking the silence. "Her lungs are clear. Kids are stronger than we give them credit for." Jake stared at Lily's small hand curled on the blanket, then looked up at Emily. His voice was low, unsteady. "If you hadn't been there." Emily shook her head gently. "You got her out, Jake. You saved her. I just made sure she could breathe after." But he knew better. He had carried Lily through the fire, yes, but Emily had carried them both through something deeper. For the first time, he let himself admit the truth. Maybe letting her in wasn't weakness. Maybe it was survival. The hospital corridors had grown quiet by dawn. Nurses moved softly from room to room, their footsteps muffled against linoleum floors. Jake sat slouched in a chair beside Lily's bed, his clothes still streaked with smoke, his face lined with exhaustion. Lily was sleeping now, her chest rising and falling steadily, her skin no longer flushed from the night's ordeal. Emily returned with 2 paper cups of coffee, setting one beside him before taking the chair opposite. For a while, neither spoke. The only sound was the steady hum of machines and the faint beep of the monitor. "She's tougher than I thought," Jake said finally, his voice rough. Emily's lips curved in a small smile. "She gets it from you." He shook his head, staring at the floor. "From her mum. Rebecca never gave up. She fought until the very end." He rubbed his palms over his face. I've tried to do the same, but most days I don't know if I'm enough for her. Emily leaned forward, her tone soft but sure. Jake, you carried her out of a burning building last night. You've been working nights, cooking meals, helping with homework, all while carrying your own grief. That's not failure, that's love. Her words landed heavier than she knew. For years, Jake had measured himself against what he couldn't give Lily: better clothes, a bigger home, the security he thought she deserved. No one had ever reminded him that what he did give her was what mattered most. He swallowed, his voice low. I was hard on you, about the book, about everything. You didn't deserve that. Emily's gaze held his, steady but gentle. I know why you push back. You've had to survive alone for so long, it feels dangerous to let anyone help. But Jake, you don't have to keep carrying this by yourself. Jake glanced at Lily, her small hand resting on the blanket, then back at Emily. The walls he had built for years trembled in that moment, thinner than he wanted to admit. You remind me of her sometimes, he said quietly. Not because you're the same, but because you don't back down. Rebecca never did either. She fought for every day she had. And I... His voice cracked. I've been fighting ever since, just to keep Lily safe. Emily's throat tightened, but she didn't look away. She reached across the space between them, her hand resting lightly over his. Jake, safety isn't the same as living. Lily needs to see you love again, not just survive. That's how she'll know it's okay for her too. For a long beat he said nothing. Then he turned his hand over, his rough fingers brushing hers. Not quite holding, but not letting go either. The contact was simple, tentative, but it carried more weight than any promise. A soft voice broke the moment. Dad? They both turned. Lily had stirred, her eyes half open. Are you still here? Jake leaned forward instantly, brushing her hair back. I'm here, sweetheart. Her gaze drifted toward Emily, then back to her dad. Can she stay? She whispered. Jake looked across the bed at Emily, who waited silently, her eyes uncertain. For the first time, Jake allowed a faint smile. Yeah, he said softly, she can stay. Emily exhaled, her hand still resting in his. And in that fragile dawn light, the three of them finally felt like they belonged in the same story. 2 weeks after the fire, Jake and Lily settled into a temporary unit provided by the city. The walls were bare, the furniture sparse, but it was safe. Jake worked longer shifts than ever, his eyes hollow with fatigue. Every spare dollar went towards saving for a permanent place. One evening, Emily stopped by with dinner in paper bags. Lily greeted her with excitement, telling her about school and insisting she come to the science fair. Emily promised she would. After Lily drifted off on the couch, Jake sat at the table, sorting through the day's mail. An envelope lay unopened at the top of the pile. He turned it over in his hands, then slid it across to Emily. Job offer, he said flatly. My old company wants me back. Steady pay, full benefits, health coverage for Lily. But it's in Ohio. Emily's chest tightened. That would be a big move. Yeah, Jake rubbed his temples. I can't ignore it. She needs security. A roof I don't have to worry will catch fire again. I'd do anything to give her that. Silence settled between them. Emily reached for her coffee but didn't drink. Finally, she spoke. I got an offer too. A research fellowship in New York. It's the kind of position I've been chasing since med school. A program that could shape the rest of my career. She paused, her voice softer. It's everything I thought I wanted. Jake looked at her carefully. So you should take it. Emily shook her head. It doesn't feel so simple anymore. Jake leaned back, his jaw tight. You've helped us more than I can ever repay. But maybe this is where it ends. You follow your dream, I take the job, we both do what we're supposed to. Her eyes shimmered, but her tone stayed steady. And what about what feels right, Jake? What about Lily? What about you? He exhaled sharply. What feels right doesn't always pay the bills, doesn't always buy medicine when she's sick. Security comes first. Emily stood slowly, pulling on her coat. Maybe you're right, but if you go, she'll miss me, and I'll miss her. She glanced at the little girl asleep on the couch, her small frame curled beneath a blanket. Her voice softened. You've built walls to keep her safe. But Jake, sometimes walls keep love out too. The door closed behind her, leaving Jake in silence. He stared at the unopened envelope on the table, then at his daughter's peaceful face. His chest ached with the weight of the choice between the promise of security and the fragile, unfamiliar hope of something more. For the first time in years, he realized he didn't know which mattered most. The envelope from Ohio sat on the table for days. Jake carried it in his jacket, unopened, as he drove late-night shifts. Every time he thought about signing it, something inside him resisted. One night, while rummaging in his jacket for loose change, Lily found it. "Is this the job?" she asked, holding the envelope carefully. Jake nodded. It'd mean more money, better insurance, a fresh start. Lily tilted her head. "Would it mean more time with you?" The question cut straight through him. Before he could answer, she pulled something else from her backpack, a folded piece of paper worn at the edges. "I found this in Mom's box when we moved after the fire." Jake unfolded it slowly. Rebecca's handwriting stared back at him. "Jake, if you're reading this, it means you kept going. I knew you would, but please don't spend the rest of your life only surviving. Lily needs to see you live, not just fight. If someone comes along who makes you smile again, don't push them away. Let her see you love. That's how she'll know it's safe for her to love too." Jake's eyes blurred. He pressed the letter against his chest, his heart pounding. For years he'd told himself safety meant shutting the world out. But Rebecca's words made the truth plain. He wasn't just protecting Lily. He was caging them both. The next evening he drove across town and waited outside Emily's hospital. She stepped out tired from another long shift and froze when she saw him. "I don't want Ohio," Jake said quietly, "and I don't want you in New York, at least not without us. I want this. You, me, Lily, messy as it is." Emily's eyes filled, but she shook her head. "Jake, New York has been my dream since med school. I fought for that program. It isn't something I can just throw away." He pulled the letter from his pocket and handed it to her. She read in silence, her hand covering her mouth as tears slid down her cheeks. "She gave you permission," Emily whispered. "She reminded me I'm still alive," Jake said. "That Lily needs to see me love again. I want that to be with you. But if you choose New York, I'll understand." Emily folded the letter carefully, her fingers trembling. "You think it's easy for me to turn that down? It's not. I've built my whole career around that goal. But Jake..." She looked up, her voice breaking. "For the first time, something matters more than my ambition. You, Lily, this family we've been building without even realizing it." Jake stepped closer, his voice low. "So we're choosing each other?" Emily let out a shaky laugh through her tears. "Yes, we're choosing each other." Weeks later, Lily stood at her school science fair, her project proudly displayed. Emily and Jake stood side by side, watching as she explained balance and gravity to the judges with bright confidence. When she won first place, she ran into their arms, laughing as if the world had never been uncertain. That night, the three of them walked home together. Jake carried Lily on his shoulders while Emily walked close beside him, their hands brushing before finally intertwining. It wasn't a perfect ending. Life never was. But for the first time in years, Jake didn't feel like he was just surviving. He felt like he was living. Rebecca had been right. Love wasn't weakness. It was the only thing that made strength worth having. And as Lily's laughter echoed into the night, Jake knew they weren't just patching together broken pieces anymore. They were building something new. A beginning. Lesson. True security doesn't come from money, status, or walls we build to protect ourselves. It comes from love, trust, and the courage to let others in. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this story. I'm truly grateful for your time. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a like and subscribe to Rain Inside for more heartfelt stories. I look forward to seeing you again in the next one.